He was outstanding again last week, and I think one of the buys of the summer, probably alongside the Liverpool fullback Kirkes.
Great start to the season, but it was Burnley. I'll have to remind a few of your fans.
And then the centre-back's got to go there, and then that's where Haaland's going to really hurt you, okay? It won't be gung-ho Ange ball, it's much more adaptable than Ange ball.
Manchester City welcome Tottenham Hotspur to the Etihad Stadium on Saturday lunchtime in a top-of-the-table clash. Both teams had a perfect start to the season. City with that 4-0 win at Wolves, while Tottenham beat Burnley 3-0 at home. I'm Will Pugh. We're back in the Tactics Exposed Team Talk studio with Betfair and Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins is alongside me, as he is every Thursday. Dino, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm all right, yeah. It's been an interesting week in the transfer window, which let's not talk about, hey?
Oh, bless him, talking all quietly. He thought he was going to get Eza, didn't he? Right, Dino, huge game coming up this Saturday for your team and, of course, for Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. As always on Team Talk, we're going to be answering your questions. Question number one, Dino, which will show you right here. How do Spurs stop Tijjani Reijnders? What a game he had in that opening day at Wolves, and what a question that is.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you straight away, but it's going to be a bit more complex than that. One of the best debuts I think I've seen from a player who's come from somewhere else into the Premier League. Just, I did watch him a couple of times last year, once for the Netherlands and once for AC Milan. And just for a bit of background, AC Milan finished 8th, and yet he was still named the best midfielder in Serie A. It probably still shouldn't come as a massive shock to us that he's a very good player, but it did come as a shock of how quickly he completely influenced that game. So for those who didn't see it, was involved in the build-up in the first goal, the sort of pre-assist, if you like, then scored a brilliant left-footed goal with for the second goal.
What a finish that was.
Amazing. First time, both-footed player, and then the third goal for Haaland with a gorgeous little run and then cut back. So he operated, so let's go straight to the board, hey? He operated he'll start in this position here. Sorry, I'll just move that back and we'll show the Man City starting formation. But that's so fluid now, which we'll come on to in a minute. But we're talking about Reijnders here. So perhaps Bernardo Silva here and Reijnders here, with obviously Nico Gonzalez filling in for the injured Rodri at the moment. So let's move City into an attacking shape. Obviously, Haaland straight up the middle. Tijjani Reijnders there, Bernardo Silva there. So we have my favourite 5, yeah? We talk about that all the time. We talk about that 5, and City will end up there, okay? So straight away, you see Reijnders is going to be in a very, very tight space against a defensive Spurs line. So that's one of the ways straight away Spurs will try and stop him, is to make sure that these spaces in here, in this area, are really, really tight. So it's not this, where he's got lots of room to operate. It's this, where it's very, very tight, and they'll try and force him backwards. But what I found really impressive about him last week is obviously he can go both ways. So, he scores his goal from this position here. So, we'll swap him with Bernardo Silva, and he bursts into this position here and scores, okay? So very, very impressive. But he's operated mostly in their attacking setup from the inside right. And where it was really, really dangerous was this defender here doesn't know if to stick or twist. And what Wolves got wrong is they dived in on him. And we saw straight away how quick his feet were. There was an occasion before the first goal where he actually beats the man in this position, and then he lifts a little cross for Erling Haaland here. Now, nobody needs to be reminded how dangerous that's going to be as the season goes on, okay? Second thing he did was then he got boxed out here against Wolves, and Spurs will try and do that a lot in these areas, close those areas down with 3 players with their left 8 dropping in. But what he then did is he came back inside this way, and then we had a runner from here and a runner from here, and he hit this gorgeous cheeky chip over the top. So he's capable of going both ways, which is going to be really, really tricky for those teams to deal with. So stopping him, get around him, but don't dive in on him is the main thing, and crowd out with numbers. I thought Wolves were brave last week, but they almost played into City's trap because it created spaces for the midfield runners to go into. And with Pep's new style and shape, that is going to be a real issue if you dive in and leave spaces elsewhere.
On our record-breaking Team Talk episode for last Thursday, Dino, looking ahead to the Manchester United-Arsenal game, you spoke about Bryan Mbeumo occupying that space on the right-hand side of Manchester United attack whereby exactly the same thing, really, where he isn't sort of marked by anyone. He isn't in anyone's normal default position, and what a headache that creates for defenders. Obviously, Reijnders plays in somewhat of a different position to Mbeumo. Is it the same principle? It's
almost the same principle, but where, just to remind us of those who didn't watch it, as you say, it was great viewers, great comments.
Is there anyone left who didn't watch it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. So, but what I would say is that let's just imagine this is Mbeumo and these are different colour counters for a moment. That Mbeumo sort of started in this position.
Yep.
So he's standing there effectively and creating that space in between the four players around him.
Yep.
So he's in the middle, and that nobody quite knows who's going to pick him up. Where it's different for somebody like Reijnders is that he'll start in a deeper position and he'll move into that position.
Okay.
So he's not in the starting setup where I say City get into an attacking five. He's not just standing there. He moves into that position. And then what that enables, which City didn't do well enough last year at all, was go beyond the ball and run beyond the ball. And we saw in the Club World Cup, and we saw in that Wolves game, he did it for his goal, and then he did it for the setup for the other goal, where the ball went wide. I think it went wide to Oscar Bob, and then Reijnders has gone in here and burst into that channel there, and then the defence all drops back, and he had the presence of mind to cut the ball back for Haaland to score.
Great goal,
so absolutely brilliant goal. And one thing I think is massively to City's advantage this week, as we'll come on to Tottenham's shape in a moment, is that Wolves play a back three as well. And so City have almost got these tactics set up for 2 weeks in a row. They haven't had to switch from one to the other. It's a big advantage for them. And Reijnders will try against Tottenham and do exactly what he did against Wolves.
Just quickly then, before we move on to point number 2, Dino, obviously the answer seems to be, in a nutshell, you've explained it very well there, but it seems to be don't dive in on Tijjani Reijnders. At some stage, you can't just stand off and off and off these players forever. Is this going to be the week where he shows yet another impressive part to his game? And if Tottenham heed your advice, they stand off and off and off, and he'll surge forward with the ball. He showed he's an excellent ball carrier as well as all the other things he did so well. They stand off and off. At some point, you have to commit and make a challenge. Well, is that the danger with City? Because they've got so many other good players around them.
Exactly right. And again, we'll come on to this slightly differently in a second with City's new look for this season. But just highlighting this player here, and nobody, this is not me revealing anything that most viewers don't already know. But Mickey van der Ven here,
fast is he?
Yeah, he's quite quick, right? So what Spurs will try and do first and foremost, as I said, is crowd him out. Okay, crowd Reijnders out in that area there, but also, as you say, they're not just going to stand off. They will allow Mickey van der Ven to engage that 8.
Right.
So he is the Man City right 8. Mickey van der Ven is the left-hand side player. So they will allow Mickey van der Ven to engage that 8. Reijnders, you'd like to think tactically aware, I'm sure he is, and Pep and him will have this conversation before, absolutely no question, it'd be great news for Manchester City if Reijnders can drag Mickey van der Ven into that position there to open up this channel, okay? And then either you get a winger going out to in, or you've got this guy called Erling Haaland, who is then going to run into this space here.
Yep.
So there is a danger there for Spurs, and there is another tactical element for Tijjani Reijnders to disrupt this Tottenham back 5.
Yet another game of exhilarating athletic chess in store by the sounds of it, Dino. Right, we've spoken about Tijjani Reijnders in particular and how Spurs at least try and stop him. But for question 2 that we've had, what will Pep do differently this season? We are going to go on to Tottenham in a little while and talk about their shape and how they will approach the game. So don't go anywhere, Tottenham fans, just yet. But what will Pep do differently this season? We know what an adaptable manager he is, Dino. He's been recreating football, it seems, for decades, it seems now. What will he do this season for City after a disappointing campaign last time out to refresh and go again?
Yeah, I was delighted that City played in a certain way in the Club World Cup, because it gave someone like me 2 or 3 different ways of watching them ahead of the new season. And then I was able to analyse that. And then watching the Wolves game again, and again in preview to Spurs, it was something slightly different again. So for the eagle-eyed viewers who watched that just now, they would see I've already got City set up in a 2-3-5 shape. And often on Tactics Exposed, I've talked about a 3-2-5 shape for most teams, because they will want a back three, a midfielder, a fullback inverting into midfield, and then getting a 5-man front line. So they go 3-2-5.
Not dissimilar to what you talk about Arsenal doing?
Exactly that, exactly that. And Chelsea very much as well, because obviously Chelsea create a box in midfield.
The inverted fullback.
Exactly, the inverted fullback. So if I just reset it, okay, this will take 20 seconds, but we'll reset it. So City into a back four, Lewis. And what I love about Lewis in this formation as well is everyone thought he was going to leave City this summer, and I think it would have been a huge mistake, right? Pep will say he's not a fullback, he's not a midfielder, he's not a winger, he's a footballer, right? So he can do anything in this Pep setup, okay? So then, we have Nico Gonzalez as the holder, and we have 2 midfielders. Obviously, we're expecting Reijnders and 2 wingers. So that with Haaland up front. So that is their on paper TV lineup as we set in, right? Okay. But what they were doing last season is this was often Gvardiol. And Gvardiol was ending up here. And he was the attacking 8.
Quite impressive attacking stats, actually.
So they ended up in that shape there. But it lopsided them a little bit, because this winger didn't know whether to go in or out. This 8 was restricted because the channels to run in were all gone.
Like we talked about with Calafiori.
Exactly that. So this season, what they've done, the fullbacks are both going in, and the 2 centre-backs are going up. So let's push the 8s up there straight away, right? And what they're doing in attack is still forming that front 5. But what is going to be frightening this season, right? Coaches all around the land will be teaching boys and then players talking about 3rd-man runs. Right. How about 6th-man runs for Manchester City, okay? Because what they're going to do is they're going to hope, obviously, Tottenham will sit in this 5 at the back. They'll drop players right into this shape. Look at how congested that is already, right? So the 8s are going to go up and get as close to Erling Haaland as they can, both sides.
You can
and then
say
the wingers are going to be right up.
It's okay.
All right, it's okay. And then, obviously, the midfield is going to get a lot of possession up here. City are going to have a lot of possession in these zigzag patterns around here, with Tottenham only occupying a front 2. But what we're going to see, we saw it in the Club World Cup, where it was Matheus Nunes in this position, not Rico Lewis, but again, could be either of those this week, who make that run from here into here. And they're the one that breaks the line. So all of a sudden, City have got a front 6. And that was very different from Pep, where, it became a lot of sideways passing last year, and they couldn't break the lines here. So in here, Matheus Nunes or Rico Lewis bombing through here. If the ball comes this side of the field, obviously that right back comes back in and forms a midfield 2. And then it can be rejuvenated Nouri who goes and makes that 6th-man run through there and make a front 6, okay?
Even for Man City, that sounds risky, Dino.
But it is. But when you consider you're going to be playing against a back 5, you've got one less player to deal with on the counter-attack. So let's say that Rico Lewis or Matheus Nunes push into that position there. They've still got a solid box here. All right, Spurs are going to want to break an 8 away, perhaps Saar maybe, or somebody like that to make a run.
And with the fullbacks.
Yeah, with a counter-attack in these positions here. But they will trust Rejuvenated Nouri to get back. Pace, defensive. He was outstanding again last week, and I think one of the buys of the summer, probably alongside the Liverpool fullback Kirkes, was one of the best left backs in the league last year. So that to answer your question there. One other thing I just want to talk about with the new style of Pep this season, and I'll try and do this as quickly as we can. So what they were doing last season is they were leaving wingers right out on this touchline when they play out. So let's say a team goes on a half press against City, because you very rarely press right up. Tottenham will be very brave, but they will very, very rarely go all the way up.
You heard them with all their players on the edge of their own box 2 seconds ago.
But if this is a goal kick, right? Okay, this is a Man City goal kick, which there will be the odd one at the weekend. Yeah. So that will be the odd one. So you end up with, you end up in a relative something, a shape, something like that, where you've got the midfield and City back into a back 4. But what they did a lot last season was this. They had the wingers right out on the wing. But what we saw in the Club World Cup, and not so much against Wolves because it was against the back 3, what we saw was the 8s come in here and the wingers come right off the wings in there, okay? And that meant if you can invite somebody on like this, and then you get someone
luring
jump
them into a trap.
You lure them in like this, and then City will go in here, direct into there. And they did that in the Club World Cup, which they didn't do a lot last season. Then what was interesting in the Wolves game is that these wingers. Sorry, let's go back to Club World Cup. In the Club World Cup, these wingers start there and they go in to out. So then, when they get possession in this area,
defensive positions, goal kicks or whatever it might be,
they start here and then they go out, which then leaves these players moving up, and then the fullbacks who start out when these players are in go from out to in.
Kind of like emptying the midfield, like you were talking about?
Exactly that, to give that space in there. So if these guys are deep, and let's just concentrate on the fullbacks and the wingers for a moment, they start narrow and they start wide.
And then they occupy the space that the wingers vacate.
When the ball goes up there, the wingers go out and the fullbacks go in. And then if you just imagine it like that, then all of a sudden, who are your wing-backs picking up? Do we go in with the wingers or do we stay out because we know that they're going to go there in a minute? And as your two centre-backs, do you go and follow the man? And it's disruptive patterns of play from Pep that we're going to see much more this season.
Right, coming then, Dino. It's that time of the show. We get to talk about Tottenham. Great start to the season. But it was Burnley. I'll have to remind a few of your fans. Will Thomas Frank just park the bus against Manchester City? It's difficult to know whether that's from a City fan or a Tottenham fan, Dino, but...
It might be someone who just watched the Super Cup final with the way they played against PSG.
Well, potentially. So will they, Dino? We won't just do this as a yes or no section. Give us a bit of detail, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to use the phrase park the bus in having an extra defender...
Well, don't have a go at the viewers, Dino. This is nothing to do with me.
The simple answer is yes. They will play with a five.
So, topic number 4.
I can't foresee a scenario. And look, maybe I'll be wrong and it'll be the most open game of football you've ever seen. But Thomas Frank at Brentford had a very good record. Actually, up until last season, it went a bit wrong for him last season against the big boys. But he had a really good record against that big six.
He did, especially at City, didn't he? Dino, though, Tottenham last season went to Manchester City under Ange Postecoglou, European trophy-winning manager that you got rid of, and absolutely wiped the floor with Pep City. Well, why not just do the same thing again?
Because Thomas Frank doesn't work that way. It won't be gung-ho Ange ball. It's much more adaptable than Ange ball. Okay, so yeah, we will. If anyone watched the PSG game, this is going to be a very, very similar thing. So there was a pre-season friendly where Tottenham played Bayern Munich and they got torn to shreds. Yep. And it basically, Thomas Frank admitted in the press conference afterwards, we had to do something different against PSG. PSG, the best team in the world. And I know they only had 10 days pre-season after the World Club Cup, but let's be fair to Tottenham. They matched PSG and pretty much outplayed PSG for 70-odd minutes. The PSG bench made all the difference and Spurs couldn't hang on and
went
all Spursy again
well,
at the end.
That was exactly it. Stop nicking my gags about Spurs. But it's the small glories I've got. Exactly, go on.
Right, so what they will do is they'll play in a 3-5-2. And, that will turn into a back five, obviously, with Pedro Porro dropping in here and Jed Spence dropping in there. I would love to see Destiny Udogie play, but I don't think he's quite fit yet.
Just quickly, Dino, and I'm not being facetious anymore. You've called it a 3-5-2 there. Is it one of those situations, as we see with Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, right, where it's almost 3-2-3-2. The two are the fullbacks are kind of in like a mid position where they will just play as midfielders and defenders.
Yes, absolutely right. And you'll see that from the average position, right? But that's where average position sometimes, when we analyse games, can be a little bit misleading because they actually barely ever end up in those mid positions. It's just that half the time they're up
there.
They're
one or the other, exactly.
And half the time they're back there. So their average position is in there, okay? So they will absolutely do that. And they will play Spurs with a deeper six, who I would imagine will be João Palhinha. And what was obviously the Burnley game, Thomas Frank was able to leave out Palhinha and Bentancur to rest them from the Super Cup, and then they will come in, I would imagine, and play exactly the same tactics as they did against PSG, against Manchester City. Similar level of players that you're playing against, similar plan. So why does Thomas Frank do this in these games? Why does he adapt to a back three? And as I say, adaptable. And it's basically because he's unashamed in it. He will say, well, we're playing against quality opposition. What's wrong with having another defender? Absolutely fine. Where this will be slightly different for Spurs against Man City, as it was against PSG, is that PSG don't play with a number 9. So Ousmane Dembele would end up in midfield somewhere in here.
Dropping deep
and then there were times against PSG where even if Hakimi or the wingers were pushing on here, even when you had Desiree Doué right in here and pushing right on, this man here was not up front. He was dropping in to get the ball in here. And so actually, Christian Romero, a lot, didn't have anybody to mark. Right. And I was screaming at the telly at this point saying, we've got to go for them, almost get this centre-half in a midfield position and allow another midfielder to go and join the attack, because we were getting so much joy on the counter. I keep saying we there. Tottenham were getting so much joy.
I don't think anyone...
That was terrible.
If anyone's been watching Tactics Exposed or Team Talk for the last year, I don't think anyone's in any doubt who you support.
No secrets of my support. But yeah, so that was a thing that's going to be different this time. Obviously, you're going to have Erling Haaland occupying 1 or 2 or 3 of those centre-backs. So the key to this formation for Thomas Frank is that you have the extra man, and it allows midfielders to go and put pressure on the ball with having a spare man behind them. Okay. So again, that's where the game of chess will come in, with when those fullbacks push into those channels.
The sixth-man run
we just discussed. Can Spurs pass their man on? So let's say Tijjani Reijnders goes in and occupies Mickey van der Ven. You've got a winger over here with Jed Spence. Obviously, Haaland sitting on Romero. That leaves Danzo as the spare man. Does Bernardo Silva going there? Spurs going man, all the way along, man.
And as we were speaking about before, then those two sort of defensive midfielders for Tottenham, the central midfielders on either side of the 3, are going to presumably be dropping in as well.
Exactly.
To sort of help with those attacking eights of City.
Yep. And this is the key man for me in this game, João Palhinha. I'm really hoping he's fit from a Tottenham point of view. But it'll be really interesting then if we see a fullback go from here, is the Spurs left 8, which will likely be Bentancur, pick him up and track that run, or is he going to be passed on to try and nick the ball here and João Palhinha go and track that run? Okay. So they've got 2 options there to do that.
What's
and
more
then the
likely?
same on the other side. Well, I think it will depend on the game situation, yeah, and also how brave Tottenham are in wanting to spring counter-attacks the other way. So I think. And this is very difficult for players to do in game, but I think what Frank will be drilling this week is that if it's this side, Bentancur will track the run. Because if it's Nunes or Rico Lewis, then it will be Bentancur tracking the run. If it's this side of the field, I think they're going to allow Pap Sarr to go and get closer to Kudus and Richarlison, who are then going to be out, because then Palhinha will come the other side. Because now let's look at that as a game scenario. Spurs have gone man. Let's say they win the ball back in this scenario. Then you're going to get Kudus run here, Pap Sarr run here, and Richarlison run here, and you're creating a big problem for Manchester City on the counter.
You're just 1-on-1 all over the pitch.
All over the place,
yeah. Is that then more of a difference in pace on that side? When you talk about Pap Sarr and Palhinha, it's just Palhinha's not as slow. Pap Sarr will be more effective in breaking from deep than Palhinha would.
Yeah, Palhinha or Bentancur.
Yeah.
So he'll be the one that Spurs want to release up the field to do that. And obviously, Kudus' position will be quite flexible in that as well.
Quite. Dino, anything else?
Yeah, there's just one thing to add where I fear from a Tottenham perspective where it could break down, OK? So the back 5, and Thomas Frank will talk about this very openly, which is great when a manager talks like this, is where the 5 at the back formation falls down, OK? So often it's when players come out of position. So if we get them back, if we get City back into a more normal 4-3-3 shape where they might play out, OK? So against PSG, Tottenham really pressed high, really went for it. So the right back got right up here. Jed Spence and the left backs went right up here, which means the 2 centre-backs have got a whole position, OK? They're pushed right on like this.
Would they
Midfielders went right up in these positions here. Honestly, it was like this.
Yep.
Right in those positions.
The centre-backs out that wide.
Yeah, absolutely. Centre-backs out that wide. Kevin Danzo came this side. Because what it means is that you've got a decision to make. Either you've got the centre-back stay in here and then the full-back goes there, which means the 8's got to go there, and then the centre-back's got to go there. And then that's where Haaland's going to really hurt you, OK? So you want Mickey van der Ven in this position where he can match this winger for pace. Because if you let your full-back do that, then you're going to be pressing right in here, okay?
That's a luxury not many clubs have, isn't it?
No.
Being able to leave a centre-back as fast as Mickey
Exactly.
Van de Ven
And then
on
the
a
other
winger.
thing in a back five, just lastly, I know this has gone on for quite a while, but the last thing is when you're defending in a back five shape, okay, often what happens is you get the overloads in. So let's create that City front five again. You've got the fullbacks coming in, you've got Nico Gonzalez, and you've got there. So often what happens is ball goes wide, obviously man goes out, okay? Number 8 goes in, centre-back picks him up. Fullback comes in, left 8 picks him up. Striker, he picks him up. So the ball's over here, okay?
Yep.
Ball's in this area over here. Centre-backs are going to come across, and you get in this position here where you get dragged right in, okay? And then the danger is this, okay?
For Tottenham.
For Tottenham. Because if you allow, in this midfield position, a little break in play where a City player can come in here, or a brave centre-back, John Stones, for example, comes in here to get the ball, the quick switch of play, and you are done. You are absolutely toast in that situation. So what Thomas Frank coaches is what he wants is to block that pass. So that's where Kudus as a 10 will come in to block that pass. So if the pass then comes backwards to switch play, and then you want to switch play by going here, by going back and along, by the time it's switched,
You've had time.
everybody's back in shape.
And if there's
everybody's back across.
If there's one trademark of Pep Guardiola's time at Manchester City, it's the amount of time they probe up a wing and recycle the ball around the other side.
And Spurs will be very happy if they recycle. Where they won't be happy is if it's a quick switch of play.
Right, final question then, Dino, from the Team Talk audience ahead of this brilliantly exciting game on Saturday lunchtime. How can Spurs adapt later in the game? You've done a brilliant job there, mate, of highlighting how Spurs are likely to set up. As we see so often in this day and age, most managers make subs, it seems, there or thereabouts, around the 65 to 75 minute mark is typically most managers' first substitution, depending if their game plan's going particularly badly. You've seen how Tottenham have set up there, so just talk to us a little bit how, if they're still in the game or they're perhaps a goal down, what weapons Thomas Frank has got from a tactical perspective, I suppose, in his armoury.
Well, the first weapon to say is that even though they're going to be in this 5-3-2 shape from the start, that doesn't mean they're not going to try and attack. Set pieces...
Oh, you said they might get a goal kick.
Yeah, well, Kevin Danzo's long throws will be a huge weapon, OK? Lucas Bergvall took them when Danzo wasn't playing on the weekend, so if by chance that Bergvall plays in one of the midfield positions, he could take them as well, OK? So they will go for it. They had 9 players over 6 foot in that PSG game. So both centre-backs scored. So we're going to talk about set pieces much more for Tottenham this season. So that'll be the first thing. But you're quite right. Look, if it's 0-0 or 1-1 after 70 minutes, they ain't changing. Okay, they are. You offer him a point now, he'll take it. Okay,
course, yeah.
If anyone goes to Man City, especially the way City played last week, and you offer them a point at this stage, even Liverpool are taking that at this stage of the season.
Despite the fact you went there and wiped the floor with them last season.
Yes, absolutely. I'll take a point now. If you're offering me a point, I'll take it. Okay, but obviously, if Spurs are behind in the game, then around the 20 to 70-minute mark, they're going to have to make a change. And the obvious change, and that will just highlight this again, is that if City go ahead, City will end up much more in this shape, okay, where the wingers will hug the touchlines more. They'll try and dominate the midfield by having either a 3 at the back there, where they're 3v2, and then that will make them a 4v3 in a midfield area, okay? So that's fairly simple. They'll try and do that from that point of view if they go ahead. Okay, so Spurs, with Kudus most likely starting off Richarlison in the 10 position, the change obviously is where Spurs have got an extra man here. So they've got 3v1 if City start to pass the ball around midfield at 1-0 up. So then Kevin Danzo is probably the man who comes off. You go to a 2 with Romero, and then you go, OK, let's bring on the left winger. Let's get Kudus out on the right-hand side. So that could be Brennan Johnson, Odobert, Mattis Tell, and then you get your midfield players come up, and then you give City a much more different problem going that way. So Rayan Aït-Nouri will have to then play much more as a fullback to deal with Kudus, and then Rico Lewis or Nunez on that side will have to deal with the winger. And then you go, well, is Nico going to go and pick them up? Those two are going to have to drop in as 8s. And then maybe even Spurs take João Palhinha off later on, make that a Bentancur and make it another runner, Bergvall, somebody like that from midfield, and make it going the other way. So that formation comfortably adapts, because we know Spurs fullbacks like to attack. And so, therefore, your only real change is a centre-back for a winger. It's a fairly simple switch if they're losing.
Well, fair play, Dino. And don't forget, of course, with Betfair's Safe Sub, your bet is not over yet. It rolls on to the player coming on. So if, like Dino was explaining then, you've had Danso for a card and he comes off, and it's Brennan Johnson who comes off the bench. If Johnson then gets booked, you still get paid out. Dino, excellent stuff from you. We're looking forward to the game. Very, very briefly, what's the score going to be?
Oh, he put me on the spot there. If you think Brennan Johnson's going to get booked, hopefully it's taken his shirt off and run into the crowd with the equaliser, eh? Look, I think City will win. I think City are favourites. As I say, give me a point for Spurs now and we'll take it. I think 2-1 City's probably my shout, but Spurs will give it a good crack.